What's up, and welcome back to the College Basketball Bracket Science Podcast, your encyclopedia for the college basketball season. Less than 6 weeks away from college basketball. In fact, just about 5.5 weeks. Today, we're going to be talking about the Big Ten in our preview series. 18 teams now in the Big Ten. We're going to go over the power rankings, preseason first team all Big Ten in my eyes, the odds each team has to win the conference, some of the best bets, of course. Then we're going to just give some intel on what to expect in the Big Ten this year. Before we get started, feel free, please like and subscribe. Keep it going. Follow us on our social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Bracket Science with 2 S's. And check out our newly reformed website, bracketscience.org. Just 1 S in science in that one. Early access to our content on there. Many short blogs on there, quick reads. Already did the Big Ten preview on there. You can see a nice little visual of some of the odds the teams have to win the national championship if you're into betting and that sort of thing. And of course, the odds to win the Big Ten. Join the new Discord. The link is below in the show notes. Nothing on there right now, but we're trying to get it started. Conversations are going to be heavy during the season. We're going to post a lot of our best bets in there, so you're not going to want to miss that. Before we get into the show, let's talk about the poll of the day for you all to vote on. It's very simple. I think there's 4 front runners right now to win the Big Ten this year. The question is, who is your preseason favorite to win the Big Ten? The options are Purdue, UCLA, Indiana, Michigan State. Those are kind of the 4 teams that have kind of expected to win the Big Ten. Now, maybe you want to throw Ohio State or Illinois or even Michigan. You trust Dusty May. Leave a comment. Let us know. Now let's get into the trivia question of the day. It's time for some trivia time.
Trivia time.
All right, the trivia question is, how many Big Ten teams made the NCAA tournament last year? Now, we're not including Oregon. We're not including, Washington, and even though they didn't make it, or UCLA or USC. None of them made it. We're not including Oregon. So outside of Oregon, how many Big Ten teams made the NCAA tournament last year? All right, before diving into the Big Ten, let's talk about SoBet. Let's get paid. Let's talk about SoBet real quick. It is a new betting platform that allows you to see professional bettors' picks. Do you want to turn professional in betting as well? You can also do that. There's no hiding your record or the people you follow's record. You can subscribe to VIP access, just a couple bucks a month, and it'll show up all their plays along with, before you even dive into that, you can see what their overall record is, how many units they're up, how many units they're down. So that might make you want to, it just shows that it's kind of worth it, so you can end up making some money on your own. As mentioned, if you get big enough, you can start a VIP channel yourself, start charging people. Join today, start your betting adventure, and start making money. Click the link down below in the description labeled SoBet. Of course, bet responsibly. All right, let's get into a little bit of Beej's breakdown.
It's time for Beej's Breakdown.
All right, so we are recording this late September 26th. It is a Thursday, and we are talking conference realignment still. Let's start with Utah State. It all involves the Pac-12, the newly reformed Pac-12. Utah State has officially committed and is going to the Pac-12, joining all the other Mountain West schools that we already talked about in the show. San Diego State, Boise State, Fresno State, and one more that we are missing. Can't remember to whichever school that is. It's at Colorado State, excuse me. So Utah State joins them. We also got word that Memphis is kind of the sexiest mid-major brand to go after. Pac-12 went after them. Memphis stayed no. So did Tulane, also said no out of the American. So did USF, also said no. Gonzaga, just craziness in the Gonzaga saga. We got word that Gonzaga that it was officially committed to going to the Pac-12. It was big news. Then the Pac-12 commissioner came out, or the Gonzaga AD came out and said, this is not true. This is not happening yet. It seems like it's going to happen. They just probably haven't found out the final details. Looks like Gonzaga going to end up in the Pac-12. Not going to jump to conclusions just yet. It seems as if they're going to go after UNLV next, which we would expect. They're a huge brand. Everyone wants that Vegas brand. So it's now currently up to 7 teams in the Pac-12. Washington State and Oregon State will be back after a couple years in WCC. As mentioned, San Diego State, Boise State, Fresno State, Colorado State, now Utah State, and then potentially Gonzaga, potentially UNLV. It's a pretty good conference. It It's not a power conference. It will be the top of the mid-major conference. Speaking of Gonzaga, the other news, Gonzaga will take on Baylor in a top probably 10 showdown, I would hope, on the first day of the season. That is fun. November 4th, mark your calendars, Gonzaga and Baylor. Now they're playing this game up up by Gonzaga in Spokane, but they are not playing the game on campus, but it is a basically home game for Gonzaga. Good for Scott Drew, new team going to travel to a team with a lot of continuity in Gonzaga. Going to take them on in Spokane. That will be a fun matchup. Should be top 10, maybe even top 7 or so, but I don't think top 5, but good stuff. Giving the college basketball fans some good stuff on opening day. All right, let's dive right into the Big Ten preview. The Big Ten, now a coast-to-coast conference, as we mentioned, adding Oregon, UCLA, Washington, and USC, This just kind of laid down the law. The Big Ten is kind of them and the SEC, they're the two big dogs. When you're adding brands like this, I mean, their media deal's the best. It's just, it's on a level of its own, the Big Ten and the SEC. I know the Big 12 is the best basketball conference, but in terms of overall, I mean, obviously all 4 of these schools, UCLA, USC, Oregon, Washington, powerhouses in football. So Big Ten is here to stay. They have the best business plan. So as mentioned, there's now 18 teams in the Big Ten. The past 2 years, it's been Purdue. Purdue has been the top dog. I know they got upset by Fairleigh Dickinson 2 years ago. They were still a 1 seed, and then they kind of redeemed themselves last year. Made it all the way to the national championship, but they do lose Zach Edey, their guy, their huge guy, 2-time defending player of the year, Wooden Award. This kind of just levels out Purdue. It brings them back to the field. The Big Ten may be the closest conference in terms of just talent and rosters from 1st to 18th, from top to bottom. Bart Torvik, who has a great metric, does predictions for 2025. His computers say that no team in the Big Ten will go better than 12-8, and no team will go worse than 8-12. Now, this is highly unlikely. It's not going to happen. Some team will separate itself as the best and the worst. But just in prediction, that just shows it is so hard to kind of predict the Big Ten this year. Let's dive into some team-by-team breakdowns. Starting with Illinois. Illinois is coming off of the Big Ten championship. Yes, they won the Big Ten last year. Remember that? Purdue got beat by Wisconsin. It was Wisconsin, Illinois. Illinois won the Big Ten championship, made the Elite Eight. They're kind of on top of the world right now, but they are losing Terrence Shannon Jr. They're losing Marcus Domask. It's going to be a completely new roster. They brought in guard Kylan Boswell from Arizona. Kasparis Jakionis will be also in the guard position, along with Ty Rogers is back. Ben Humikris is back as a forward, transferring in, and then forward Kerry Booth rounding out their starting 5. It's close to see what this Illinois team will be like. Brad Underwood has kind of raised the ceiling for this Illinois team, obviously making the Elite Eight last year. People forget, though, 2 years ago, Illinois was a 9 seed in the NCAA, or they were either an 8 or a 9 seed. They were in an 8-9 game in the NCAA tournament and got beat. So it's not like Illinois is like the powerhouse of the Big Ten, but everyone kind of thinks their floor is super low under Brad Underwood. It is. Like, they're probably going to be a tournament team, I would say, but just remember, they were in that 8-9 game 2 years ago. So if they end up there, don't be too upset with Brad Underwood. He's still a great coach. Moving on to their neighboring state, Indiana. Mike Woodson back for another year, to the surprise of some people. He put together a fantastic portal class. This is kind of well known, probably the top portal class in all of the country. He's on the hot seat. He is on the hot seat, no doubt about it. If he doesn't succeed with this experience, this talented team, there's probably going to be a change at the top for the Hoosiers. Their projected starting 5 looks like this. Guard Miles Rice, the transfer from Washington State. Guard Kanan Carlisle, transfer from Stanford. Guard Mackenzie Mbako, back for his sophomore year, was a 5-star freshman, did not play like it last year. At forward, Malik Renew, who made a big jump last year for the Hoosiers, is back. And at center, Umar Ballo, the transfer from Arizona. A lot of transfers, not a lot of shooting. Mackenzie Mbako should be a great shooter. Didn't shoot it too great last year. They also brought in Luke Goody from Illinois, who should be their shooter. I think Miles Rice is going to be the key. He's going to have to knock down shots. Teams started figuring out Umar Ballo last year. He is a horrific free throw shooter. Started fouling the crap out of him. This really hurt Arizona down the stretch, which is why Arizona they just got pummeled by Clemson, quite frankly, in the Sweet 16. So he's going to have to work on that free throw shooting, but an incredibly talented roster, as mentioned, coming off the bench, Luke Goody, also freshman Bryson Tucker. It's a good team. It's a good team. If Woodson doesn't do it with this team, they're going to wish that they went and got Dusty May, but we'll see. Let's move on to Iowa. Iowa kind of flying under the radar this season. They had a fantastic offense last year, just horrendous defense. They missed the tournament. They're a sleeper this year. I will note them as a sleeper right now. Pretty talented roster. Peyton Sandfort is back. He is the name to know. Potential All-American. Peyton Sandfort is flying so far under the radar. He single-handedly kept Iowa relevant last year. He is an elite offensive player. He'll also get some help this year. Owen Freeman, Josh Dix for Iowa. Iowa, a sneaky pick to make a little bit of a run this year and finish towards the top of the Big Ten. They're my sleeper in the Big Ten right now. Their starting five looks like this. Guard Drew Thowell. Guard Josh Dix. Guard Peyton Sandfort. Forward Even Bronze. Forward Owen Freeman. Pretty good roster. Watch out for Iowa this year. Is this year that McCaffrey gets back in the NCAA tournament? I think they got a decent shot. Let's move on to Maryland. Maryland has high expectations this year. They had high expectations last year, and they were, quite frankly, just bad last year. They lose Jameer Young, but they bring in a lot, including five-star freshman Derek Queen at the center position. They also brought in Jacoby Gillespie, Rodney Rice. This is a pretty talented roster. Julian Reese is also back for another year. So that's four of their starting five: Jacoby Gillespie, Rodney Rice, Julian Reese, Derek Queen, and also at guard, Deshaun Harris-Smith. It's a pretty good lineup. I expect them to be somewhat towards the middle of the Big Ten, somewhat towards the bubble as well. Hopefully not another disappointing year for Maryland. Let's get Maryland back in the NCAA tournament. Moving on, let's talk about Michigan. Michigan moved on from Juwan Howard, thank God. Trivia time, but let's get a little quick trivia. What was the best seed Juwan Howard ever had in the NCAA tournament? I'll mention it at the end of this, so think about it for a second. Juwan Howard's season last year was a complete disaster. They turned it over to Dusty May. It was rumored that it was going to be Indiana or Ohio State who acquired Dusty May, the sexiest pick in terms of the best coach, the highest ranked coach, Final Four. He was the guy everyone was going after. He was the sexiest choice. He ended up going to Michigan, kind of as a surprise. He made an immediate impact as in the transfer portal, as you expect, with a brand like Michigan and a coach like Dusty May. He looks to have a roster that can, if they all come together, can be very talented. Starting five looks like this: guard Trey Donaldson, guard Roddy Gale Jr. from Ohio State, guard Namari Burnett, guard Reuben Jones, and center Vlad Golden. They also brought in big man Danny Wolf from Yale, their guy. Starting lineup's kind of up for grabs. I went with the four-guard lineup. We'll see what it looks like. Now, remember that trivia question. Juwan Howard, what was his best seed in the NCAA tournament? It was a 1 seed. Juwan Howard got a 1 seed with Michigan when Hunter Dickinson was there. Bet you didn't think that. That kind of shocked me, too. I was just looking back through a couple of the years. I was like, Juwan Howard got a 1 seed. I completely forgot about that. Weird stuff. Juwan Howard out of there, though. Dusty May taking over the helm. Let's stay in the state of Michigan. Moving on to Michigan State. They returned some key pieces this year. Tom Izzo, not a big fan of the transfer portal. He added only one transfer, Frankie Fiddler. Got him from Omaha. He averaged over 20 a game last year. They also bring in Jace Richardson from the recruiting class. But it's their continuity that is what's going to kind of carry this team this year. Their team looks like this: at guard, Jeremy Fears Jr. will be back and will be starting at the point guard position. Expect him to average a lot of assists this year. At guard, Trey Holloman. At guard, Jaden Akins. At forward, Cohen Carr. Cohen Carr is going to be a must-watch guy this year. Freak athlete. Absolute freak athlete. Going to be fun. And forward, Xavier Booker is back. Xavier Booker was supposed to be a one and done. Didn't really live up to the expectations last year, just like Michigan State didn't. Michigan State was a 9 seed last year. Remember that whole debacle where they were preseason number 4 overall. Ended up a 9 seed. They beat Mississippi State in the first round, ended up losing to North Carolina in the round of 32. It was a disappointing year for Michigan State, so it's kind of, do you trust these guys with the continuity? They were supposed to be really good last year. We'll see. Right now, they're going to be one of the most popular picks to win the Big Ten. Not in my book. Not in my book. I think they're a good team. I think they're tournament bound, but I don't think so as of right now. Moving on to Minnesota. Minnesota comes into the new year with, quite frankly, low expectations. They do return Dawson Garcia, who is a potential all-Big Ten player, even potential All-American if his team probably wasn't going to be so bad. Just doesn't have much help around him, quite frankly. They're going to be towards the bottom of the Big Ten. They're going to be a popular pick to finish last as well. At guard, their starting lineup looks like this. Guard, Mike Mitchell Jr. At guard, Brennan Rigsby, the transfer from Oregon, who's got some sneaky upside. Can really jump out of the building. At guard, Lucai Patterson. At forward, Lincoln Meister. And at forward, as mentioned, Dawson Garcia. Dawson Garcia set up for averaging a lot of points and a lot of rebounds this season. Let's move on to Ohio State. Ohio State moved on from Chris Holtmann in the middle of the year last year, led Jake Diebler into the interim head coach role, and then they went on a hot streak. Who knows? Was it the coaching, the motivation of Jake Diebler, or was it just one of those things where, things were just so bland under Holtmann? And I think Holtmann's a good coach. Things were bland under Holtmann, needed some new energy. They got it in there, and they just kind of started playing to their potential. First game, how about this? First game for Jake Diebler last year, beat Purdue. Ended up going to the national championship game. Imagine that. Your first game as taking over the helm, you beat Purdue, court storm, everything. Pretty good story there for Jake Diebler. So they ended up making him the full-time coach this offseason. He did a good job in the transfer portal. It's Ohio State. They're going to get a ton of NIL money. They are in position to make the NCAA tournament in his first season, I think, for sure. I have them projected as like a 6 or 7 seed in my bracketology right now. Pretty good rebound. They bring back guard Bruce Thornton, who's one of the most underrated players in the entire country. If Ohio State wasn't so bad last year, Bruce Thornton would be a nationally known figure. They also bring back guard Michi Johnson, who transferred from Ohio State to South Carolina, now transfers back from South Carolina to Ohio State as a much better player. They bring in guard Micah Parrish from San Diego State, a lot of experience there. Bring in forward Sean Stewart from Duke, highly ranked guy, along with center Aaron Bradshaw from Kentucky. So yes, a lot of transfers. Will the continuity be there? We will see, but this is a talented team. Let's move on to our first new team in the Big Ten that we're going to talk about, Oregon. Oregon was the last Pac-12 championship. Well, I guess not the last since they're bringing it back. They were the last Pac-12 champion. Moving into the Big Ten, it's obviously a big football move, but their basketball program is still also kind of on a high. They made it as an 11 seed last year, just battled injuries all year. Beat South Carolina in the first round, then lost to Creighton in double overtime in the round of 32. Dana Altman has put together a roster that looks pretty good. It looks good enough to get into the NCAA tournament. They're going to be a popular pick as a sleeper. I think they're good. I just don't really think they're much of a sleeper. I expect them somewhere around the 5-6 range in the Big Ten this year. Their starting five looks like this. At guard, Jackson Shelstad. Know the name Jackson Shelstad. He is in position to go off this year. Guard, Jadrian Tracy, back for another year. He was hurt a lot of the year last year. Guard, TJ Bamba, coming from Villanova. Just a disappointment at Villanova, quite frankly. Maybe he just needs a change of scenery. Nobody lives up to the hype at Villanova anymore, it seems, outside of Eric Dixon. At forward, Brandon Angel, and at forward, Kwame KJ Evans. KJ Evans looking to make a big jump this year, going to be a sneaky pick to be a breakout player. Let's move on to Nebraska. Nebraska, I did not know this. I'm sure it was probably publicized quite a bit. They've never won an NCAA tournament game. I don't know why I didn't know this. Never won an NCAA tournament game. They were in position last year with Kosei Tominaga, just a fan favorite. They were an 8 seed but lost in the first round got a bad draw. Texas A&M. I mean, we all thought Texas A&M was going to be like a 10 or 11 seed, but they were like 5 or 6 seed good. Like they had a ton of talent. Texas A&M got a bad draw and Texas A&M beat them. Nebraska did decent work in the transfer portal. They're kind of just, their ceiling's kind of limited. Their floor's not low. It's pretty high, so expect them somewhere around the middle of the pack in the Big Ten. Projected starting five looks like this. Sam Hoiberg at guard, playing under his dad. At guard, Aaron Eulis. At guard, Raleigh Worcester. At forward, Jawan Gary. And at forward, Bryce Williams. We'll see how Nebraska can do. Let's move on and talk about Northwestern. Northwestern, quite frankly, one of the most underappreciated basketball programs in the entire country. They're not like the popular pick in the Big Ten because they're just not the biggest brand. They've done nothing but win the past couple years. They've been dominating Purdue at home. I mean, obviously, it's a little tougher on the road, but they almost beat Purdue on the road last year. They took them to overtime, but at home, they beat them last year. They beat them the year before. They've done nothing but kind of win. They keep getting in the NCAA tournament. A lot of this was because of Boo Buie. Boo Buie is the best player in Northwestern history. He's out of eligibility. He was a huge obviously just a massive part. He was just their guy. He was so underappreciated. He was incredible. Great defender, great offensive player. Chris Collins is one of the most underappreciated coaches. I keep saying underappreciated about Northwestern. I know. I think they are. He continues to win. Will this be the year where he can do it without Boo Buie? We'll see. They're going to be an unpopular pick to make the NCAA tournament. Most people are going to have them out. We'll see. That's how it should be just about every year for him, though, and they somehow manage. The projected starting five looks like this. At guard, Ty Berry. He will be in for a big year this year. At guard, Justin Mullins. At guard, Nick Martinelli. At forward, Brooks Barnheiser back for another year. And at center, Matthew Nicholson. So they return a lot of their pieces. Ty Berry, Brooks Barnheiser, Matthew Nicholson played key roles last year alongside Boo Buie, who was the guy. So Ty Berry, Brooks Barnheiser, they're going to have to step into some huge scoring roles this year. We'll see about Northwestern. Their floor is always high under Chris Collins. All right, let's talk about Penn State. Penn State returns the second most minutes from last year's Big Ten. Second most minutes. I mean, out of all the 18 teams in the Big Ten this year, second most minutes. With that being said, that Penn State team was not very good last year. We saw sparks. We saw some pieces where we're like, wow, this team's pretty talented. Why are they so bad? Expect them to be towards the bottom of the Big Ten again this year, quite frankly. I think it's just at some point you see sparks, but at some point maybe they're just not that good. I don't know. Ace Baldwin is very good. They return just about everyone. I don't know. That's what I'm saying. It is so hard to pick the Big Ten this year. They could climb their way towards the middle of the Big Ten with this roster. Like I expect them to be towards the bottom, though, quite frankly, just because the team was so disappointing last year, quite frankly. The projected starting five looks like this. At guard, Ace Baldwin Jr., as mentioned. At guard, Nick Kern Jr., at guard, DeMarco Dunn. At forward, Puff Johnson. At forward, Zach Hicks. So pretty solid roster, it seems, but we'll see. Were they just not good last year because they're bad? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see for Penn State. All right, let's talk about Purdue. It's officially the post-Zach Edey era. As mentioned, in Purdue, this is a huge loss, the biggest loss in all of college basketball. Even with losing Edey, Purdue, one of the two Power 5 teams in the entire country, also with Marquette, who did not make a single addition via the transfer portal. They rely on internal development. This is what they pride on. That's also what Marquette prides on. They're two of the top programs in the country. They're going to have to continue this trend to continue to dominate the Big Ten. I mean, we see it every year. They always have a guy. They always have a guy who is an absolute stud. They had Carson Edwards. They moved on to Isaac Haas, moved on to Zach Edey. They always have a guy who is one of the, quite frankly, the best player in the conference. Maybe not Isaac Haas, but Carson Edwards and Zach Edey for sure. Without Edey, I still, because of this internal development and because they do return a lot of continuity, I think Purdue's going to be fighting for a Big Ten championship quite again in the regular season. I think they're going to be great. The projected starting five looks like this. At guard, Braden Smith is back. Guard, Fletcher Lawyer is back. At guard, Miles Colvin is back. At forward, Trey Kaufman-Wren. And at forward, Caleb Furst. So all five players, I mean, obviously there's no freshmen in the starting lineup. All five players back from last year. Braden Smith going to have to do it without Zach Edey. He was a tremendous assist guy, but most of his assists came to Zach Edey. The guy I expect to make the huge jump is Trey Kaufman-Wren. I've been speaking his name for a long time now. If you haven't watched Trey Kaufman-Wren, it's because Zach Edey was hogging the load, but every time they kind of, Zach Edey got a lot of attention, obviously, but then you just kind of had Trey Kaufman-Wren as the four, and he was just sneaky. His footwork is fantastic. He just puts the ball in the hoop, as simple as it is. I think he's going to make a big jump this year. I think he might end up being, him and Braden Smith, they're going to coexist, and I think this Purdue team is going to be atop the Big Ten. Yet again, just like we do with Dan Hurley, you give him the benefit of the doubt. I think you have to do the same thing with Matt Painter. Matt Painter has earned that respect. Let's talk about Rutgers, the most anticipated season for Rutgers in a long, long time. They've had some good teams. They've made the tournament. But this year, it just seems different because of the two sensational freshmen, Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. They're two of the top 5 recruits in the country, no matter where you look. Someplace you look, they're 2 and 3. Someplace you look, they're 2 and 4. No matter where you get them from, they're going to be the top 5. We're going to see how far these freshmen can really carry the Scarlet Knights this year. It's going to be the surrounding pieces. Can they do it? Can they do it? We will see. Their starting 5 projected looks like this. At guard, Jamichael Williams. At guard, Jeremiah Williams. At guard, Dylan Harper at forward, Ace Bailey at forward, Zach Martini. They also got Tyson Acuff. It's going to be a good team. We're going to see what this Rutgers team can do this year. Very excited to see what their ceiling ends up being. Let's move on to UCLA. UCLA coming off a very disappointing year. Main issue, depth and scoring. They couldn't score. They didn't have any depth for anyone who could score. A lot of complaining went on last year from Coach Mick Cronin, but guess what? It worked. Most of it was because of the NIL funding, and they got a good-looking roster this year. So obviously they brought in some NIL money. In their first season in the Big Ten, UCLA right now is the favorite to win the Big Ten. Even after such a disappointing year last year, they're the favorite. Just so close. We'll see. Their starting five looks like this. At guard, Sky Clark, the transfer from Louisville. At guard, Dylan Andrews back for another year. At guard, Lazar Stefanovic back for another year. At forward, Tyler Bilodeau, the Oregon State transfer. And at center, Ade Mara, who is supposed to be an NBA player by now. Hasn't quite panned out. Big guy, over 7 foot. Big guy. They also brought in Eric Daly Jr. from Oklahoma State. They also still have Sebastian Mack back from last year's team. They're deep. They're really deep. This UCLA team is good. I think they're going to be one of the top teams in the Big Ten, quite frankly. If Mick Cronin is an underrated coach, he's really good. He's really good. No, he did a lot of complaining last year, but he's really good. We'll see. Let's move on to USC, also in the Big Ten this year. They turn the reins over to Eric Musselman. Musselman thrives in the transfer portal, as we all know. He had to utilize it this year. He had to put together a completely new roster. We're going to see if he can really make this team work. Last year was kind of a disaster for Arkansas, trying to put together a heavy transfer roster. But the year before, remember, they beat Kansas as an 8 seed in the NCAA Tournament. Kansas was a 1 seed, got to the Sweet 16. So Musselman, he's got the capability. The projected starting five looks like this. At guard, Clark Stargett. Good pickup. At guard, Desmond Claude. Really good pickup. Desmond Claude from Xavier. This is a fantastic pickup, along with guard St. Thomas. This is a fun backcourt. Stargett, just kind of a pass-first guy. Desmond Claude and St. Thomas can really put the ball in the hoop. At forward, Chibuzo Agbo, and at forward, Josh Cohen. USC, kind of flying under the radar. I think they got some sneaky upside if Musselman can put this team together and really get their talent to work and coexist. They got a lot of scorers, so we're gonna have to. They're gonna have to give up part of the ball for the team's success. But watch out for USC. I think they're a little bit underrated. Let's move on to Washington. Washington moves on from Mike Hopkins, moves on to Danny Sprinkle, who just wins wherever he goes. He should not have won last year at Utah State. They were projected like bottom of the league, and they won. They won the regular season. Completely new roster last year. He's gonna have a completely new roster this year. For Washington, moving on from Utah State. He brought with him the defending Mountain West Player of the Year, great Asabar, which is huge. A decent roster, great coach. Washington, we'll see. They're not going to win the Big Ten, I wouldn't think, but we'll see. The projected starting five looks like this. At guard, DJ Davis, transfer from Butler. At guard, Zoom Diallo. This is a fun one, sensational freshman. At guard, Makai Mason. At forward, Tyler Harris. At forward, great Asabar. Good team. I like this roster, just like USC. I think Washington a little bit underrated. Watch out for Washington. If they can coexist under Danny Sprinkle, he wins. He wins wherever he goes. Why wouldn't he win here? We'll see. Better conference. Let's talk about Wisconsin. Wisconsin's season was like split in half last year. They were blazing hot at the beginning of the year. Remember, they were like fringe 1 seed, first 2 seeds. Some bracketologists had them as a 1 seed. And then it just went straight downhill, and everyone's like, yeah, this team, they're a lock to get in the NCAA tournament, but they're not going to win a game, and that's exactly what they did. They ended up being a 5 seed, lost first round to James Madison. They built up a lot of quality wins early and then just fell off the face of the earth. The question is, which Wisconsin team will show up this year? We don't know. They lost a couple pieces. They lost Chucky Hepburn to Louisville. They lost A.J. Storr to Kansas. Big losses. Their starting five looks like this. At guard, Cameron Hunter. At guard, Max Klessman. At guard, John Chanji. At forward, Xavier Amos. And at center, Stephen Crowell. Expect them with Wisconsin. Their floor's always high because it's Wisconsin. They're a great brand. But we'll see. The roster looks a little bit shaky. All right, now let's talk about the Big Ten power rankings and the odds to win the regular season.
Power rankings.
All right, I think the team to beat in the Big Ten is Purdue. It's Purdue until it's not, just like UConn. It is Purdue until it's not. They are plus 600 to win the conference. These odds are via BetMGM. My second-ranked team, I have UCLA, who is the favorite, as mentioned, at BetMGM. They're only plus 400. In third, I have Indiana at plus 600. 4, Michigan State at plus 500. At 5, I have Illinois at plus 1,000. 6, Ohio State plus 1,000. 7, Michigan plus 1,100. 8, Oregon plus 2,000. At 9, Rutgers plus 900. At 10, Maryland plus 2,000. At 11, Iowa plus 6,600. A lot of odds there, a lot of odds. At 12, Nebraska plus 10,000. At 13, USC plus 2,500. At 14, Wisconsin plus 3,500. At 15, Washington plus 10,000. 16, Northwestern plus 5,000. 17, Penn State plus 10,000. 18, Minnesota plus 15,000. My potential sleeper, pretty much any team in the bottom half. As mentioned, these are all so close. By far the hardest one to do the conference projections. I think the top 4 are kind of separate from themselves, as you can see with the odds. Purdue plus 600, UCLA plus 400, Indiana plus 600, Michigan State plus 500. Then it drops off to actually Rutgers at plus 900. I wouldn't bet Rutgers plus 900, quite frankly. But if you think any of these other teams, Illinois plus 1,000, Ohio State, I probably wouldn't bet, but plus 1,000. I think the best bet for your value is Iowa at plus 6,600. But outside of that, the Big Ten, unless you're a passionate fan about any of them, I would stay away from it. I would stay away from the Big Ten. It's so up for grabs right now. So there's going to be no Beej's best bets for the Big Ten. Don't want to force it. Not going to risk it. If anything, I would say Iowa plus 6,600. Good Lord. That's a lot of odds. I mean, it's just, why not? Why not? They got some upside. Now let's get into our Big Ten preseason first team.
It's time for the Bracket Science Preseason All-Conference Team.
All right, starting at guard, Braden Smith from Purdue. He's going to have to make a big leap this year. I think he can do it. At guard, Bruce Thornton. Remember, big fan of the Ohio State point guard. At guard, Peyton Sanford from Iowa. At forward, Dawson Garcia from Minnesota. And at forward, Great Osobor from Washington. Just like the standings, everyone's very close. There's a lot of guys you can throw in here and make just about the same, who will make about the same impact. I think these are just kind of the guys that, set up for, I think Bruce Thornton really gets noticed this year with Ohio State being better. Braden Smith, Peyton Sanford, and Great Osobor are the obvious choice. And I think Dawson Garcia is going to just have a huge year because his team's not very good. Couple sleepers to look at, Julian Reese from Maryland, even if you want to throw Derek Queen in from Maryland. Jackson Shellstad from Oregon, who we talked about. He's a sneaky good pick. And then if you want to throw in Trey Kaufman-Wren as well, also a sneaky good pick. But with that being said, my player of the year, Peyton Sanford. This is not going to be the most popular pick. The most popular pick will probably be Great Osobor or Braden Smith. I'm going with Peyton Sanford. I think Iowa is going to get back on the map this year, and I think Peyton Sanford just kind of really shows to people how special he is offensively. That's going to do it for our show today. Hopefully you enjoyed the Big Ten preview. Before we get out of here, let's talk about the trivia question we talked about earlier. How many Big Ten teams made the NCAA tournament last year? The answer, only 6. It seemed like there were more of them. There were only 6 teams who made the NCAA tournament last year in the Big Ten. I expect them to have quite a few more this year. If I had to project, I'd probably say about 9 of them, quite frankly. I mean, there's 18 teams now, a little bit more to choose from. Next week will be the Big 12 preview, so you're not going to want to miss that, the best college basketball conference. And then following that will be the SEC, probably the most fun college basketball conference to follow this year. Before you leave, please vote on the poll. Who's your preseason favorite to win the Big Ten? Maybe you got a little bit of info after we talked about it today. Purdue, UCLA, Indiana, Michigan State. Whose roster do you like the best? Think it's someone else? Comment below. Let us know. Like and subscribe before you leave. Follow us on our social medias, link below. Check out the website, bracketscience.org. We'll talk to you again real soon. Talk to you about the Big 12 next week. Take care.